Good evening, friends, and welcome to this episode of the Green Gardening Series. The Green Gardening Series is brought to you by Keep Angleton Beautiful, our great friends at the Angleton Parks and Recreation Department, Brazoria County Master Gardeners, and of course, the Horticultural Program Area of Brazoria County AgriLife Extension. We bring these programs to you once a month, every second Tuesday of the month, around 6 p.m. Tonight's program is going to focus on tool maintenance, garden tool maintenance. We'll look a little bit at a shovel, pruners, how do you use pruners and loppers effectively, the kind of products that are appropriate for use and long-term storage and maintenance of your tools. We look forward to hosting you in future programs. Of course, if you'd like to keep up with the programs that we have, browse online to our website, brazoria.agrilife.org, and we have many more programs in store for you in the coming months. So thank you for joining us this evening, and without further ado, gardening tool maintenance.
I don't know if you can, you can probably see that. Martha, you see all the rust on this, right, on this shovel. So this is a shovel that it's a tool we call a sharpshooter shovel. Typically, this is used for irrigation lines. If you're having to dig really skinny trenches, then you use a shovel like this, the right tool for the right job. In this case, we use this to lay pipe in the ground, also to dig out other, smaller areas. I use this pretty much exclusively for a lot of my work, as a matter of fact. Those blunt nose shovels, those, of course, oh yeah, sharpshooters are fantastic, Martha. They really are. Blunt nose shovels are great for just hauling out large hunks of soil. But this particular one, I use as an all-purpose tool. I use this for planting trees. I use it for digging out lines for irrigation. I use it for digging a hole to measure soil penetration with water if I'm trying to tap into that. Hi, Tony. Sorry, we kicked you out a few minutes ago. I had issues with my broadcast, but we're back now. We're firm.
Good deal.
Yeah, there's another person named Martha that's joining us as well. I was just showing Martha one of the tools that I have. So basically what I was mentioning, and you can see all the rust accumulated on this puppy. Now, it's more surface rust. It's not deeply penetrated into the metal. I've had this sharpshooter tool for going on 15 years now. And these tools will last forever if you treat them correctly, if you make sure to clean them off. And this sharpshooter shovel that I had, literally, I left it out on my back porch for 3 days, and it had rained. And now it's got this nice patina of rust all over this. And so, at the very edge, it has eaten into the metal just a little bit. That can be challenging, if you let your tools go too long. All of these tools, all good tools, are made of metal, and metal does rust. It's just the nature of the beast. Whether it's a cheap pair of hand pruning tools, which I actually do recommend, if you've got, we save all of the tools that we've collected over the years, and I'll be showing them to you in just a moment. So again, with a little bit of sweat equity, you can make a tool like this last for 20 years and beyond. You just got to take care of it. So I've got rust forming on this, which is an oxidizing process, right? Rust just gets into the metal. It can start to degrade and eat away and pit the metal as well. And that's one thing you don't want. We're trying to prevent. So it's not a lost cause on this. I do see some corrosion on the end of this shovel, but there are some chemical processes that I could use to help get that off of there. So even so, again, just a few days out in the elements, and this tool started rusting. And I've seen that happen to hand pruners that are left out in the field. Come across scissors that are like that as well. A lot of times you can rehabilitate those, but sometimes you can't. If they're too far gone and there's too much rust embedded in the metal, then you might as well just pitch them. But I guess it all depends on the quality of the tools that you're using. So this sharpshooter, the shovel head is going to last much longer than the handle. The handle is made of fiberglass, and yes, I have cracked it. and I continue to use it until it's no more, and then I'll replace the handle. But this is the business end, and that's the part that I really want to keep. So it's not a lost cause, even though there's some rust in there. I can certainly get rid of it quite easily. Now, in your experience, and if you've got a microphone on, or even Martha, I know that you don't have access to a microphone, but if you wanted to put in the chat box and answer my question, and I'll address that in just a moment. But what chemicals do you use to get rust off of your metal tools? And I've got some examples up here on my homemade table here. Don't tell my wife I'm actually using the cutting board, but I put some newspaper down, so I'm going to protect everything. Make sure I protect everything. All right, I'll give you a couple more seconds. What chemical would you use to get rust off of your pruners, for instance, or that shovel?
Use vinegar, maybe?
Say that again?
Vinegar?
Right on. So, thank you for that. That was Tony, right?
Yep, that was me.
Excellent. So Tony says vinegar. Susan says W2. Martha says I use WD-40. So if I had a prize to give you, Tony, I would give it to you. This is your tool. Vinegar. You can get 20%, 5% acidity, 20, 40%. And a very acid ingredient is what's needed to get rid of that excess rust. Remember, it's just kind of an oxidation process where the rust kind of gets caught in the pits of the metal that's already there. Even though it looks smooth, it's still going to get caught in there. And the best way to get rid of it is with vinegar. Now, I have had people say that they'll use bleach to get rid of that. Certainly, you can use bleach for that, but through some resources that I've found, bleach can be very corrosive to your metal. So if you're using bleach, I urge you to discontinue using bleach. It might, if it's the only chemical that you have at hand. Again, these are household chemicals that we have under our cabinet or on a shelf. Easy to use. If you have nothing else to use, certainly you can use bleach, but I highly recommend not using it for long-term maintenance. It is in itself, it's a corrosive, very alkaline chemical, and it will start to degrade your pruners, your hand pruners, your shovels. So we're just going to take this off the shelf. So I'm going to repeat myself. Don't use bleach. You can use it short term, but don't use it for the long term. Vinegar is your friend. Now, Martha and I think Susan had said that they would use WD-40 or W2 or WD-40. It is certainly it's a lubricant, petroleum-based product. It will work temporarily, but it's not meant for long-term maintenance. So products like WD-40, that will work in a pinch, but it's only short term for the job that you need. As far as just loosening that rust, you might be able to loosen it a little bit, but again, vinegar is your friend. Now, what I've done, and I'll use these pruners as an example. I might lose my head for a minute, might lose my head in space, so you'll have to forgive me if I get out of screen just for a second. But these are a pair of really cheap, here, I'll try to bring them to the camera really quickly. These are this is a pair of really cheap pruners, but we've used them for many, many years. And they work for, small jobs that we have. As long as you keep them sharp, they'll last forever. I tend to prefer, some folks like myself are brand loyal. I know there are some of us that like to use Fiskars. Any brand that you like, it's okay. If you like these knockoff brand of pruners that actually are ergonomically designed, they fit really easily in the hands of my wife, for instance. She has really small hands, and they work really, really well for small pruning jobs. I like Corona. I'm a Corona dude. Now, I want to show you some elements of these pruners. These pruners here, the cheap ones in my hand, they're spring-loaded as far as having them having a little bit of resistance to keep it in a scissor-like fashion, that's spring-loaded. And you'll see that on brand products like Fiskars. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you like that, that's okay. If it works for you, that's great. I tend to prefer Coronas. For me, this was the first kind of product that I was introduced. The challenge with a Corona or this spring-loaded, let's see if I can get this up here, spring-loaded pair of pruners. Again, for this is like a metal tube that acts as that spring. Okay, and you'll see that in Fiskars and these off brands as well. For this one, this is an actual coiled spring that provides resistance. Some folks, I've talked to arborists, a friend named Matt Weaver, who's also the urban forester for Harris County. He doesn't prefer Corona's own because of that. You see this little, I don't know if you can clearly see that, my lighting's a little off, but right here my fingers are pinching a little clasp. That's used to sneak up under this part here to keep these pruners closed. The challenge with this kind of configuration is that oftentimes this will get caught up in the spring, or sometimes you'll mash this tiny little latch right here that I'm pinching. You'll mash it and then you have to unbend it again with a pair of pliers. So that can be a little challenging. So, it really depends on your preference as far as hand pruners go. But we use these off-brand. Again, they're small. They're great for small work as well. Any kind of hand pruners that you do use, I recommend to get ones that you could actually take apart, because you're going to need to dunk this blade in whatever chemical you're using. And again, I do recommend vinegar, straight vinegar. This, we got this off of our shelf, and I just put some in a little container. So anyway, for this kind of work, you're going to need to let this metal rest overnight in a vinegar bath. Maybe 2 days if it takes that long, but you're going to need to pull these pieces apart. So even this off-brand, this little off-brand, it's got a removable screw on the inside. Let me see if I can get this apart. It's supposed to be easy to get apart. The Coronas are much easier to get apart. This one is a little challenging. I've done it before. I swear I've done it before. Here we go. It's coming apart. So oftentimes when you have pruners that are rusted, all parts get rusted. It's not just the spring, and it's not just the blades. You'll also get the nut that holds this in place together. It will rust, So again, if you're going to get hand pruners, don't get some like this cheap pair that was gifted to us. The challenge with this is the cotter pins, they're fixed. We cannot take these apart. And I have rehabilitated these. Believe it or not, this cheap pair of hand pruners was fully rusted. I couldn't even move the blades. So I let this whole mess just sit in a vinegar bath water for 3 days, and then I started taking it out. Oh, good. KEB lectures. I have no idea what that is. Well, anyway. So we're going to exit out of that. Now, again, you want something that you can actually take apart. Keep track of all the parts that you take apart. They're easy to take apart, like you just saw me take a little ratchet and get it off of there. Now it can work easily and dunk all of these pieces into a container. And you want to take out the bolts. You want to take off any nuts that you have, just to make sure that you get all surfaces coated with vinegar. Now I pulled these apart because they're slightly rusted. I mean, they have a little bit of dirt on them accumulated. This is always good just to clean it off. Now over time, the acetic acid or the acid bath will start to deteriorate, start to take out some of this plastic. Over time it will, with hand pruners like the ones that I have from Corona, all of the majority of this is metal. So I reduce the instance of getting these rubber handles laying in a bath of vinegar. So I just take all of this mess. I forgot to show you this. Get a container. I just have one of these takeout trays. It's a black container takeout tray that doesn't leak. Make sure it doesn't leak because you'll have a mess if it does. Got a thick enough plastic on it. I just poured about 1 inch of the bottom of the surface of this, just enough to cover all of these pieces, and you just toss them right in. Now, by the time I finish this lecture, all of the small amount of rust that has accumulated will have gone away. I can easily take it out. So you can take something like WD-40. You can start to, remove some of the rust. Initially, get it in a bath water of vinegar. Your friend, of course, after that is going to be this, right? This is steel wool. Steel wool helps to take off all of those rust particles that have accumulated on the blades. So just as a review, if you're getting any tools, make sure they're quality hand tools, or if they're an off-brand, as long as you're comfortable with them. This cheap pair that is fixed, that I cannot take apart, they're really not that comfortable. I just keep them for demonstration to show people what not to get, right? If you're going to get a pair of hand pruners, you've got to make sure that you can take them apart, and you cannot do that with this set of hand pruners here. But I have been able to shine them up. You can't really make that out from your view, I'm sure, but I've done really, really well with that. So your main job is to get off all the rust. Now, once you do that, let it sit overnight, maybe 2 days. Then, you've got an opportunity then to take some steel wool, start to just polish that up, and it removes the rust really super easily. Just comes right off. Even that short amount of time, maybe a couple of hours, depending on the time that you have and how badly rusted your tools are. Now, one thing that I do ask you to do, and that I did not do, is to use gloves if you can. I'm an old crusty dude, and I've got I built up a lot of calluses. So don't do as I do. Go ahead and use gloves just to protect your skin, because your skin is forever, right? You got to keep that forever. Other tools you want to have on hand, of course, are trusty paper towels. So make sure you clean up any of your mess. If you're working on your family cutting board, make sure you've got newspaper down to protect that surface as well. So again, a long-term solution is not going to be WD-40. Now, let's say you've rehabilitated your pruners. These are my my Corona pruners. These are ones that I bought about 5 years ago. They have gotten a little bit of rust on them, but with a little bit of use, I've kept them clean. They're doing really, really well. What do you do after you get them out of the bath? And then scrub off all the rust. Oh, by the way, let me show you my prized possession. These are my first Coronas, and I got these 25 years ago, and they're still rocking. Isn't that cool? I'm so proud of these. Now, my hands were smaller at that time, so, I just keep these around because, I just love these pruners, so I'm going to keep them and keep them rehabilitated, take them out every once in a while. It's like your old guitar, you just take it out every once in a while. So these are my primary tool now. It does have some, all parts of this I can take apart and then put in this bath. Once you get it out of there and then reassemble it, you've cleaned off all the parts with steel wool. Then how do you keep it lubricated? The best tool at your disposal, it's not going to be WD-40. Remember, this is not an adequate lubricant that's going to keep your tools well oiled over time. You are going to want to use mineral oil. Just use mineral oil, right? I got this from the store in the medicinal aisle as a lubricant laxative. Yes, you can drink this mineral. I'm not suggesting you do, but that is meant for human consumption. But I bet you didn't know you could also use it to keep your tools well oiled. Once I get the challenge with this shovel, yeah, there you go. Haha. The challenge with this shovel is trying to get it in a bath, of vinegar. You can use jars. This jar is no longer food safe, right? I just used an old mason jar, the pickle jar that I got. I could have added added vinegar to this and just dunked it in here. You can see that I've used this for this purpose before. So anything that's going to hold that vinegar is appropriate for your use. But again, the challenge that you get with tools like a shovel is, what do you use? Vinegar is fairly cheap, so I'll use a bucket, right? A big, thick plastic bucket, and just dunk one end of it in there and then start to take off the rust that way. Anything that's large enough to hold the tools that you have. So as far as long-term maintenance, again, lubricant, don't rely, just take this out of your brain. This is good for light maintenance, and hinges on doors, but it's not good for long-term maintenance for your tools. So I'm going to take it off the table. Mineral oil is going to be your friend. Other oils like this 3-in-1 household oil or liquid wrench will even work as well. But I tend to use mineral oil. It's cheaper and easier to apply. This is someone from KAB Lectures. Could you just soak a paper towel and leave it on the shovel for a day or two? Yes, you certainly can do that. I have some old cloth rags that I've used to wrap that in. You'll have to be persistent, but that's a really good suggestion. That's another way to do this. Susan says, heard add motor oil to the bucket of sand and store shovels in it. That's correct, Susan. That is a method to utilize for long-term maintenance. So I'll explain to everyone else, or y'all may already get this for those of y'all watching. Susan has recommended something that I've practiced myself. For long-term storage of these tools, I keep them in a drawer, and I'll, after I use them, I'll make sure to clean them off with, you can use, a little bit of vinegar. You can certainly use that because a lot of the plant material that you're working with is going to have a sap that's going to collect and become sticky and gummy on the ends of your pruners. And so I'll try to wipe them off with that. You can also, if you're pruning in between plants and you think that you might be or you're trying to prevent from transferring pathogens, right? Bacterial or viral pathogens from this pair of hand pruners, or maybe loppers. Here's some loppers here, right? From one plant to another, like if you're working with citrus, it probably is a good practice. If you're working between plants, clip all you want to on one plant. When you move over to another plant with the same pair of pruners, use a disinfectant. What would you use? So if you're going to disinfect these pruners between plants, right? I'm kind of getting out of sequence, right? I was going to start getting into mineral oil or what Susan had mentioned as far as a bucket of sand and oil. But I'll divert off track just for a second. If you're pruning in between plants and plants that potentially could be spreading a virus from one plant to another, what would you use to disinfect your pruners, whether they're loppers or they're hand pruners? Do you use alcohol? Yes, you can use vinegar. Certainly you can keep it in a small little vial or a little pump spray that you keep on a belt. You can. Some folks will use rubbing alcohol. That is appropriate, but it can degrade over time. Your pruners, unless you remember to go back in and start taking them out. Yes, that is one really good method for cleaning your tools. You can use Clorox wipes, and I have done that. Used it as a disinfectant. Remember what I said about bleach? That is appropriate. KAB Lectures. That's very appropriate. When you're pruning in between plants and you think you might be, or you're trying to prevent from spreading a pathogen from one plant to another, you can use Clorox wipes. But remember, after you use those Clorox wipes and you get your hand pruners back, you've just spent a couple of hours out in the field and you're burning up. You're hot. You've been out in the sun too long. You're super sweaty and tired. When you get these pruners back after using Clorox, make sure to apply, mineral oil to them, right? Because remember, bleach is corrosive, but it is a great tool to use out in the field. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying take that extra step, even if you're tired, to make sure that your tools are put away properly. So, very good answer. Thank you for mentioning that. You can also use Lysol. use Lysol. It's a disinfectant. I have one of my mentors from the University of Washington. By the way, I went to UW up in Seattle. Go Huskies! I was a student up there and I had a great time. I am from Texas, but it was great to be in another state in a completely different environment. No, it doesn't rain every single day in Seattle, Washington. It's just overcast 8 months out of the year. That's what drives people mad and crazy. But yeah, of course, yeah. Listerine, if nothing else is available. Very good. It's got an alcohol base. Certainly, it does have a disinfectant in it. So those are, you know, you can get a small bottle of Lysol, something that actually has a pump spray on it, and use that as the disinfectant in between plants. Clorox wipes will work. Listerine, Lysol. I don't know if I'd use Pine Sol, but anything that can be used as a disinfectant. One of my teachers, who's also a professional arborist, recommended using Lysol. She's like, just use Lysol. It's great. You know, it works fine. So, you know, so now let's get back to long-term storage and maintenance. Again, you know, once you get them back in the shop, go ahead and use steel wool, anything you can to get that sticky stuff off of it. You might have to sharpen your pruning tools every once in a while. I wouldn't recommend to sharpen it after every use. It's not necessary. There have been many accidents where this has come in contact with this, right? Where this tool has come in contact with this tool, and it's not a pretty sight. When I'm out in the field, I do carry Band-Aids because I have made those mistakes before. So, you know, you want to keep them sharp enough to work with, but not so super sharp you're gonna, you know, drop a piece of paper onto this and have it cut, right? You just want it sharp enough to do the job. No divots in the end of your blade. So you can sharpen them after that. Then for long-term maintenance, apply just, you know, take some mineral oil on a little rag and just simply wipe this off. It's super easy to do. And I do that with all of my tools, including the shovel as soon as I rehabilitate it. Remember, I'm that guy who left it out in the rain a little bit too long, or for a day or two, and that caused rust on it. So I definitely need to rehabilitate those. A little bit more careful with my hand tools. So now it's ready to put away. Susan did mention putting this in a bucket with sand and a little bit of petroleum oil. That is one way to maintain your tools, certainly for long-term storage. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So I do have a couple of small buckets in the back of my car. They were used for floral arrangements. You know, they're like little pails, right, about this big. But I'm simply going to put in there some sand, some coarse sand, and drizzle some WD-40 in there. Just kind of mix it up, wet it up, and then I'll just sink these head first into the sand, and that helps protect them. I will go ahead and close these pruners just to kind of keep sand out. The beauty of that is you'll get long-term preservation of your tools. But I do caution, as you can do that for your hand pruners, but I do caution against that, or at least go into it with an awareness. You will get sand particles stuck. You have the potential to get sand particles stuck in between the blades, right? So you're going to have to kind of wipe them off before you start using them and start crunching on sand, because you're going to dull your blades after a while. But it is one method to use, and thank you for mentioning that, Susan. That's a great idea. I certainly like that. Now, I have heard, I have read of using grilling oil, right? Grilling oil as I guess I wouldn't call it a lubricant, but a preservative on your blades. You can use a more organic, you know, substance like a grilling oil, but what do you think the challenges are using grilling oil? It's, you know, it's olive oil based. What are the problems with that? I wish I had a timer with the bell. Ding, ding. So, what happens if you leave oil out on the countertop? That's right, it gets rancid. So while you can, and I have seen, you know, some publications saying, oh yeah, you can use this oil, I wouldn't recommend it because it will get rancid. You will get a smell, if nothing else. You might actually attract critters you don't want. So let's take this off the table. Our choices are becoming limited, folks, and that's okay. As long as we know the tools that we can use, the appropriate substances to use for rehabilitating our tools or maintaining our tools, that's the shortest course. That means we've done the work, so you don't have to. You can just go right to these resources. So just as a review, the tools that you get, make sure that you can take them apart. You can even do that with these loppers. They have little kind of screws in here. They're hex screws, but I can certainly take these apart and treat each part individually. Hand pruners, same thing. Shovels, they should have a fixed blade on them, right? They should always have a fixed blade, but you're going to have to work around that to rehabilitate them if they get to that point. Let's say you're trying to now sharpen your tools. You can use, there goes my shovel. You can use a whetstone for that. Certainly I do. I've got a hand whetstone that I use for this. As long as I've got a little bit of a lubricant, this household oil or mineral oil also works. Just kind of wet it a little bit and then kind of draw the blade against the whetstone. Make sure that you don't have too much of a steep angle. You can always use this part. Here's the part that we want to sharpen. Right? Let me hold this up a little bit closer. Here's the part we want to sharpen, the kind of sickle part. And here's the anvil. These are called bypass pruners. Bypass meaning the blade passes right by what we consider to be the anvil. It doesn't rest on the anvil. These kind of pruners, whether they're loppers, bypass loppers, which I have down here, or these hand pruners, they're meant for fine detailed work, for getting in there and, well, this is not a good example. If I had a branch, I could show you, but I don't. They're good for fine detailed work and making clean cuts. There are other pruning tools that are called, that will have an actual anvil, or I forget what they're called. So these are bypass pruners. The other ones are anvil pruners. That means that the blade chops down right onto a surface. And that's great for gross cuts, for big, large jobs, right? Oftentimes you'll see those kind of pruners in a lopper, larger loppers. And again, that's just for getting the job done and getting a branch off. For the fine-tuned work, you want bypass pruners to make sure that you get a good, nice, sharp, clean cut. And you do that by keeping your blades sharp enough for the job. Now, again, I've got a little whetstone in the bottom of this. If I want to, I can take it out. One thing that I interrupted myself, and I'll show you, let's see if I can get this stone out of here. As far as the angle goes, you can use this anvil, these bypass pruners, you can use the anvil to help guide, right? To help make sure that you've got the correct angle. Just use it as kind of push it onto one side and just kind of draw back. And that helps keep the angle consistent on these. Not too steep, not too shallow either, just right. And a lot of that is just experience. You're just gonna have to go through it and try it out yourself. All right, let's see if the vinegar has done its job. It has. And I'm pulling, even though it didn't look rusted, it certainly was. So rust is a sneaky little booger. You want to make sure that you get off all of the vinegar that you can, kind of dry it off with a little towel. You might even want to let it air dry just for a few seconds. It doesn't take very long after a vinegar bath. Go ahead and sharpen it if you need to. Oftentimes I do. Get a little bit of a clean cut on it, and then reassemble them and apply mineral oil to it with a rag. Here's another tool that I like to use. These are hand saws. I like this style saw. There are some arborists that will use a fixed blade and they have a scabbard for it, a sheath that they put their blade into. Certainly there is a purpose for those. Those are professional. Some of those are professional tools that the blade can be removed, but it's a fixed blade. I like this because it's a cheap, blade. It didn't cost very much. When it's folded up, I can put it in my back pocket and carry it around, but I can easily, collapse it and it fits right in my back pocket so I can walk around without any hesitation. I use this quite a bit. The one thing that I do love about this kind of a saw, you can replace these blades. If you get a name brand product, certainly they're in the business for a long time. This is a Corona brand. Again, I'm Corona dependent. I know that I can get replacement blades for this. The challenge with these kind of cheap handheld devices, and I'll try to show you this as I get up closer. The blade is very flexible. That's a good thing, It's a good thing and a bad thing. I have broken blades before. Because this is very flexible, it allows me the ease and access of movement on a branch that I wouldn't get with a thicker fixed blade. Sometimes you want a little bit of flexibility, especially if you've got a really narrow area that you're trying to cut a branch with. So this is appropriate for that. But the detriment to that is the blade is extremely flexible, and you've got the capacity, the strength to snap the blade, and I've done that before. So, but again, I've got a name brand that I can easily replace the blade if I need to. Excuse me. It's a cheaper aluminum blade, but that's okay. It worked for my purpose. I cannot sharpen this blade again. Once it all gets dull, it's going to go away in the recycle can, and then I'll just get a new blade. But I can pull it apart. It's got a little screw in here. I have had this rust on the sides before, and you can see little dark pits. That's from my neglect for a couple of years, but I went in and cleaned it up, and I've had this tool. I've been able to maintain this tool for about 10 years and still rocking with it. So just to kind of sum things up, I want to thank y'all for joining me. We've been doing this for the past 45 minutes. I also want to explain the new format for this program, but I'll go ahead and summarize everything that I've got. I guess the bottom line is you got tools, maintain them, and they'll last you forever. Like my 20 some odd year Corona, tiny little Corona clippers that I just love and I can't get rid of. I've maintained them. They look super. They're not rusted at all. Here, I'll bring them up to the camera. Check this out. Look at that. No rust. Ta-da. And it's nice and sharp. Works well. Had this for a long time. I've replaced the scabbard. The scabbards just go after a while, but they're leather. If you just keep them oiled and keep them rust free, then they'll last for a really long time. No matter if they're shovels, sharpshooter shovel, these kind of tools like a handheld saw or even loppers. A little bit of advice as far as using devices to cut woody plants. I wouldn't try to prune anything over 2-inch caliper, right, for a branch. I've got really strong hands. I have very strong hands. I'm not bragging. I'm just letting you know. I'm very confident that I can clip something like that off. But all of us don't have that kind of torque out of our own hands. And as we age, we need to work a little bit more responsibly and a little bit more smart, a little bit smarter. And so never prune anything over 2 inches at the most. 1 inch preferably with handheld pruners. You might have to wind up using these kind of loppers. There are some loppers that have a lot more torque to them, and we'll work with larger branches. Certainly nothing over 4 inches, 3 inches tops, but 4 inches certainly not. You're going to have to use a handheld saw for something that large as far as woody plants go. I've seen tiny little hand pruners as well. Those are delicate. They're fine for floral work, but they're really not appropriate for working out in the yard. You need something with a longer blade that you can actually sneak in and get deadhead roses or salvias or whatever you're working with. So again, maintain your tools. They'll last for a long time. Vinegar is your friend. Use vinegar as far as that solvent goes. You can use something like WD-40, but it's not a long-term solution. It's only temporary. As far as long-term maintenance of them, once you clean them up, sharpen them up as well, use mineral oil. It's going to be your best friend as far as maintaining this. Some of the items that I suggested not to use. Do not use bleach as a long-term solution. not good. It's corrosive to your metal. Again, WD-40 is not a long-term solution. And then we want to stay away from household oils that we use in the kitchen. They go rancid. So I want to thank you all for joining me this evening. The Keep Angleton Beautiful program course, it's the Green Series. This is sponsored by Keep Angleton Beautiful, a great community resource for the city of Angleton and surrounding area. We're very happy to be partnering with them for this lecture series. I was broadcasting these programs as a Facebook Live program, but part of my job is to see what kind of a difference we're making in your life. So if you don't mind, after this program, I will send you a survey. Doesn't take more than a couple of minutes, but I want to know what you've learned from this program, how we can improve the program that I'm presenting to you, and then any suggestions that you have for future programs. It's just a good way for me to keep on top with that. Plus, it lets my boss know that, I'm doing my job by keeping in touch with you all. I also want to thank the Brazoria County Master Gardeners Association, a great group of volunteers that are helping to provide quality education to all of us. Without the service of our volunteers, I couldn't get half of what I do get accomplished. So thank you to my Master Gardeners. If y'all haven't been out there, we do have a demonstration garden, but I ask that you let me know in advance if you'd like a tour of it. I'd be more than happy if I've got time or find somebody to give you a tour of the gardens when we have open garden days programs. We have a plant sale coming up. This is down in Angleton, by the way, a plant sale featuring ornamental plants, native plants. We'll also be propagating Peggy Martin roses. We're trying to get some fruit trees from a wholesale grower available for folks as well, because I know a lot of folks want to replace the citrus that they lost. So anyway, it helps to fund the programs that we have. I'll be giving an education program on roses. So that's going to be September the 18th. It's a Saturday. Jot that down in your calendar. It's at least a month away. But the next program coming up, it'll be the second Tuesday, same time. I forget what the topic is, so pay attention to my website, brazoria.agrilife.org. Does anyone have any other questions? Y'all been great as far as providing suggestions, and I'm glad I could use this platform, the Teams platform, because I'm able to answer questions live. I finally figured out how to do that. But does anybody have any other questions or comments? All right. Oh, go ahead. Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. All right, Martha, thank you so much. Oh, thanks for joining me, folks. We'll see you later. My cats are running around the house now. This is Stephen Ruger signing off.